Okay. Hi, everyone. This is the SIG Cluster Lifecycle meeting of 22nd November. And today we're going to talk about kubeadm implementation and the things that are yet to be done before code freeze, which is today, and the 1.9, maybe 1.10 plans as well. Let's start with maybe etcd, a short update from what we know and what we don't.
So I know that they had created a build of 3.2.10, I believe was the version number, and I know that JPebets was supposed to do the PRs because I told him I didn't have time to do them, and I'm still burning through my backlog to look to see where they're at. I told him to tag me on those PRs once they're in place. But that's primarily for the HA concerns, which don't affect us yet, but will affect us in the future. And I'll have to take a look at that. But there was supposed to be an update to the client to 3.2.10 and an update of the bumped version to 3.1, whatever patch release of the actual server side component.
Yeah, I mean, it does affect the rest of Kubernetes. So, like, for those who are actually running HA, we're kind of in this, as we discussed before, in this in-between state where nobody owns etcd, but we're at least talking about it here in some form for the best for the community. The main problem, or what might be a problem, is that gRPC has to be bumped from 1.3 to 1.7, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if the client patch will make there was a topic of conversation on API machinery that occurred, and I forgot about it until just a second ago, until you mentioned that little highlight. There was a topic of conversation where they said they were willing to wait a patch release, like a 1.9.1 patch release, before updating the client. And the reasoning being was Daniel was mildly terrified of bumping it this early in the cycle and wanted to give it more test time, or this late in the cycle and wanting to give it more test time. But I don't see a 3.2.10 client update.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why it would be safer to do this in 1.9.1, because it's such a change, right? So that is maybe even worse than having it in actually embedded in 1.9.0. I don't know. In either way, it's going to be kind of terrifying, right?
So here I found the issue.
Cool, please paste it.
I'll paste it in this chat. And he's milestoned it for V110. So V110, I would totally flop client and server, right? And I think for us, we are fine.
Yeah.
For this SIG, for kubeadm, but for other folks who are deploying, it gets kind of hairy. Yeah, he's targeted for 1.10 release, which I'm okay with from this perspective, right? And I would bump both client and server. I would do both, even very early in the cycle, so you get the testing.
Yeah. Time to target the Kubernetes 1.10 release and backport to 1.9, possibly 1.8, if the fix proves to be stable.
I think a backport is actually a good strategy.
Of the client and the server, or one?
The client, at least. The people can choose the server. They don't need to.
Yeah.
They can specify overrides.
Okay, we might or might not pump the client version in 1.9. Still unclear. Okay, then I think that's good as a status update for us. I mean, we're on 3.1 something, the client right now in 1.9, and we're on 3.1.10 as well for the server with kubeadm. So that should be fine for single master.
Yes, you should be fine. And I don't know where, because Jamie's not here today, I don't know where the operator integration was. I saw that one patch is still waiting on final. Is that the final integration patch for the operator?
Yeah, I think there were two main issues. One was the dynamic CSR generation, and the other was using pod IPs, which essentially end up being node IPs for the pod, the advertised addresses for the CD peers. That is.
So that's HA. So it looks like we're not going to hit alpha HA.
Nope.
For this race. Well, that's. I mean, honestly, we made progress, so that's not bad.
That's not bad. I mean, this cycle is so short, and we got in valuable PRs targeted at component config and all the features that we want to enable the next cycle as stabilization. As these features actually get stabilized by others in the community, the AJ thing relies on the operator pretty much, as we discussed. I mean, we could have written our own thing, maybe squeeze that into the release, but that's not something we want to maintain for all eternity. So waiting a release for the etcd operator is just fine.
The bootstrap checkpointing stuff got merged. Yay. So it only took, I don't know, when did we start?
Somewhere in the summer.
Somewhere in the summer, yes, exactly. And it took a lot of arm twisting to get that in, but it's at least in. For some, we need to change the pods, and to be honest, I'm a little scared of. We need to do host volume mounts on the self-hosted pods, because right now the self-hosted pods use secrets, and they have another modification in there that does an auto mounting of a known secret for the service account, and that's easy to fix. But the other secret mounting for self-hosting, we have to figure out. We have to use host volume mounts to get the certs in there.
Yeah, I temporarily forgot about that, and just thought that we'll do secret mounting everywhere to make the cert distribution easier. Yeah. Do we have some kind of plan how to do secret checkpointing stuff, or for a future release, or is it? I mean, exactly. But I mean,
we can add secret checkpointing, right? It's not really hard to do. I think the hardest thing is getting people to buy in to the idea of secret checkpointing, and then you have to encrypt it and do all the other crap there. So I think the facilities are all there, and the jiggery is all there. I think it's just a matter of adding secrets and making it secure, and making sure that it's an opt-in only feature on some environments. So all of the jiggery pokery is there. It's just a matter of making the changes in 2 locations to make it all jive. And I think we're going to have some level of infighting with regards to the security level that this entails. But I think I don't think the code is hard, just like the code for checkpointing wasn't hard. It's more the political battle as well as getting people to sign off and buy in to make it happen. I think what I'll do, though, is if I do make this modification, I will definitely, we should talk about it now and start thinking about the things we need to do. It does make our life easier to checkpoint secrets, because then we just have the self-hosted API server have the secrets, have its certs in secrets, right?
Yeah.
And we knew this, but the exit strategy was always to use host volume mounts.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's definitely possible to use host volume mounts, but it just gets like really complicated when we're starting to rotate certs, right? I mean, because that's next up, right? Now we in 1.9 we rotate the API server serving cert, but I mean that's a really straightforward procedure with one master, because we basically just move the cert into an expired directory and write a new one because we have the CA. But yeah, updating like the serving certs of 3 API servers in an AJ scenario where we can't do anything. We can't, like, kubeadm executing on some host can't access the machine where we want to rotate the cert, then we're kind of not screwed, but it gets so much harder.
I think there was a lot of consternation that existed with the security aspects of storing checkpoints in files. And I don't recall, I think we should probably dig up those constraints, because I don't know if they all apply anymore. And it's very targeted to just the master nodes. And if you escape the kubelet somehow anyways, you already have the certs for the master. So I don't see how it's any different. Now, if this was a regular node and you're checkpointing and writing the certs to disk, I could see how that could be disconcerting, right?
Yep.
But because it is a master node and tainted as such, and that's the only one that has that flag to the kubelet specified to checkpoint to local disk, I don't really see how that's that much different from a security perspective than any other configuration.
Yeah, that was kind of Aaron's argument throughout the conversation we had. But yeah, I mean, at some point, I think we have to dig it up for discussion again, although it's kind of painful.
The two were config maps and
secrets. Yeah.
What I don't know, if you have a secret for the API server, right, and that's the only one we really care about, the most important one is the self-hosted API server.
Yeah.
I don't see that component config map perp is like chicken egg weirdness on the API server. So unless that changes, which I don't see that changing anytime soon, I don't see the need for config maps immediately, because as long as you can get back to the main API server, that's all that matters. And bootstrapping will be all about getting back to the main API server.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't use component config for the API server, right? But yeah, that's another beast. Yeah.
That's not even there. That's not even targeted,
true.
Right? So.
Not yet. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be special anyway, right? Because we might do something else, like the API server discovers from etcd storage, or discovers from its own loopback client, right? That this is the configuration I should do. Yeah, that probably makes sense. We're probably going to use config maps for the controller manager and scheduler, but that's another thing, and it's far more straightforward.
Well, I don't really care for those things, because as long as they get to the API server, That's all that matters. So as
Yeah.
long as the API server can be brought back online in the cold restart scenario for the bootstrap condition, that's all that really matters. So the API server is recoverable, and the time delay for scheduler restart it's kind of irrelevant for the control plane because your data plane is still running. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. So then we have that on the radar at least to be implemented at some point, or at least to be considered. And if we choose to not use it, we have to figure out some other path.
I think what I'll do is I will. I don't want to do it. I think what I'll do is I'll put a PR together, and I will start talking. I will start socializing the pieces now or soon to get this in place. But I know it's going to be a long haul. I got to do it. I got to start it now, knowing that it would take like the whole 110 cycle
at least
just to get people to buy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Then we have Fabrizio has looked into the proxy thing. Fabrizio, are you online here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I experimented a little bit with the idea of using the 10.096.1 VIP as a way to make nodes discover all the API servers. This VIP is managed then by the reconciler. And what I managed is that now I'm able to trick a worker node and making the kubelet and the kube proxy on the worker nodes link to this VIP instead of the physical address of the real address of the master nodes. And this is what I manage now. It is not bad as approach because basically I create an immutable rule before joining, and then this rule is made in a way that then as soon as the kube proxy starts, the rule is overridden and taken in control by the kube proxy itself. So it's pretty clean and simple. What I'm looking at now is that, in my opinion, we have to make also master nodes use this VIP for many reasons. One of these reasons is that if we are going to use component config, it makes sense to have the same component config for kubelet and kube proxy, both on master and worker nodes. I don't know if it is clear or if you agree on this. What do you think about?
I have to think. So
basically, I managed to have a worker node. Let's talk about kubelet. A kubelet on the worker node that start pinging, looking for the API server using the VIP. Okay, and this happens on the worker nodes. Now, on the master node, I have to use the same approach or not? If worker node and master node should use the same config map when we will move kubelet to the component config, the answer is yes.
So I'm trying to look at the component config thing now. So yeah, just to reiterate what Fabrizio said, the idea here that that we're looking into and experimenting with is to that kubeadm join is creating an IP tables rule from the bootstrap master that you add to the kubeadmin join command line to the service. Like, there is one special service in the default namespace called Kubernetes, which has the first available address in the service subnet range. And then kubeadm creates this IP tables rule to point to the first master, the one you specify in kubeadm join. Then the kubelet talks to this VIP, and the kubeproxy talks to this VIP. Then everything comes up, everything's proxied through this VIP. Then the kubeproxy comes up and like notices I should take care of reconciling this. Then all API servers reconcile all the time to add themselves when they register and remove API servers that are stale. So this way we'll get an auto-updating thing, an auto-updating VIP on every node from the kubeproxy itself.
So the idea, I understand what you're doing. You're basically bootstrapping the first service entry point, using that as a default route to get to the. That's okay, so long as it bootstraps properly, right? And the table rules is always there. You'd almost have to like have a configuration for the proxy on startup.
No, the only thing I know for starting up is the IP of a known master. I create a temporary rule.
But you chicken egg it then. Like you're in a weird chicken egg, because what if you're the master? Right? Like if you're the master and you want to bring it up and you're maybe have a scheduler that needs to talk with the API server, you still want to have it like a configuration to the proxy, so the proxy loads that value on startup and tries to set the route before it does anything else.
So could you kindly repeat? Because I started, of course, in the simpler place, which is the worker node. Here it is simple.
The worker node is a much more simple case.
Okay, I think that I can manage these also on master node, but it is much more complex. My idea there is that I create IP tables that proxies that net the local address to the VIP. So a kind of loop back.
Yes. Yeah.
And this will allow me to make the local kubelet to point to the local API server, and then bootstrap. I have to work on this because it is.
Do you have like a document which just describes the flow? Because there's a couple of ideas that we've percolated here and we've talked over time.
This is in the kubeadm AJ doc, I think.
Okay, this is part of one of the many incantations that we've talked about now.
Yeah, so basically I started thinking about this during the summer, and now, and included in my doc, now Fabrizio has taken over the thing into his everything, like one size fits all doc where we merged everything.
I know.
Yeah.
No, but I have also some notes about the experiment I'm doing. I can wrap up the flow and discuss on this single topic.
Yeah, that would be great. A short markdown doc or something that would just check into the kubeadm repo would be great.
I love that.
As you prefer, if we use Google Docs, we can review and change in easily.
That also works. Before.
Yes, it is not stable yet. It's just an experiment.
Yeah, and for the record, this is an experiment. We most probably are going to use something like Envoy, that is a real load balancer, instead of like, still Tim has raised the issue before with API server caching. So basically if we use this approach, it will be randomized which API server I'm talking to. And also, like, IP tables is not going to be the default for all eternity using the proxy. So if we're using IPVS, that's totally a different story when joining. But this is more like an experiment if we can do this and if it's at all possible, and then look for a better long-term solutions once we know what we actually have to do. Also, Envoy might have to grow something like kubeproxy-like, or we have to do a sidecar, or we have to do something that actually can check the Kubernetes services, basically do what the kubeproxy is doing, watching services and endpoints, and then writing to disk or writing to a temporary file or whatever.
Yeah, it would totally have to be a sidecar. It'd almost be like part of what Istio does, but only just like very small sliver of that. Right?
Yeah, and that's why we're experimenting with the kubeproxy now, because it's more fun to use something that is known to work, right, for watching endpoints and services, than writing our own thing and reinventing the proxy.
Well, 90% of the code in the proxy is mashing IP tables rules, because I've been through that, and it's no fun to like rationalize because it is not. Every time I walk into IP tables rules, I'm just sort of like, what am I doing? I didn't even know what the.
Yeah, there is a function of 2,000 or 3,000 lines of code, which is impressive.
That is a great word. Cool, but that's a really good experiment. Thank you, Fabrizio, for conducting that. I mean, we want to experiment at this time in the cycle for the next cycle, so that we know if it works, and then how it works, and if it's something we actually can ship in some release, or if we directly have to go and build a sidecar for an Envoy or whatever.
Yes, my goal here is to reach something, a first working, let me say, prototype, and then run conformance tests, Sonoboy or something is on the cluster to check that everything works.
Yep. Manages service updates. Then you had something, Fabrizio, as well, on the man page generation or stuff that we talked about.
Yes, with regard to man pages, we are kind of stuck, because the process of generating man pages is completed, but how to bundle man pages with packages is totally unclear. The topic was discussed also yesterday in SIG doc, but basically no one knows how man page can be packaged with the binaries. And we discovered also that some very old man pages are published in some public repository, but no one is maintaining them. So there's a lot of confusion there. I think that, in my opinion, we have to link this activity with the creation of the new bucket builds process. But I don't have detail about this, who is managing this, how we can get in contact with those people. So your help is really appreciated.
They aren't maintained anymore, and will use Bazel. Well, package man pages with Bazel debs RPMs, right? Is that right? So I wrote down in the meeting notes that there exists some old man pages somewhere packaged, but they aren't actively maintained anymore, and we'll package man pages with the new Bazel packages that are coming.
That's
that
another,
right?
Yeah, that sounds right. There's another question in the 110 cycle that goes beyond HA stuff, and it has to deal with like how like CNI is the one odd horse out, right? Because once we have Bazel online, we'll be able to build from the mainline repository and version RPMs and devs independently, the build products for everything. The one thing that's just weird is CNI, which kind of lives weirdly still in Anago somehow, and it's not maintained separately. When in reality, I don't see why we are publishing artifacts for that versus referencing artifacts for that. Right, like the CNI group itself should be publishing their own stuff, or we could pull the binaries directly into our RPMs and devs is another possible way to deal with it, because we have this like weird sub-packaging, right?
Yeah, the weird sub-packaging root cause was that the CNI scripts weren't updated to build for all platforms that Kubernetes did. That's now fixed. So we actually now in 1.06, we grab the CNI binaries, the table directly, and pull it down to the debs and RPMs. That is as good as we can do.
If we do that, if we just have as part of the build artifacts a direct, is it from a GCS bucket or is it from some other location?
Well,
I'd like it to be canonical source if possible.
Yeah, so then we have the other fun thing where basically GKE and GCE doesn't want to depend on GitHub for stability reasons or something. So Freehand or someone, maybe Jeff Grafton, just grab the builds from GitHub and pull them into a GCS bucket. So in some places where GKE code is involved, we're referencing the GCS bucket. In some places, like the deb packages, I think, we're referencing the GitHub artifact. They are exactly the same binary-wise, but it's just two locations, which is confusing.
I would be happy to. I'll take a look at the packaging, and if we can reference binaries from GitHub, I'm totally cool with that.
We do,
and I can see if I can update those packages.
Yeah. So there's one PR for updating to 0.6, and we also have this like weird in between thing where a kubelet of 1.8 is requiring CNI larger or less than, or larger or equal to 0.51 in our packages right now. But actually that's kind of wrong, because now when CNI 0.6 comes out, it actually may not be compatible with kubelet 1.8. At least there is some known regression there. So, I mean, we might have to do a 0.1 package release that prohibits kubelet 1.8 using CNI 0.6.
We got to get on that and validate that. Like, is there even a 0.6? Let me take a look at the artifacts that we published, because we don't have published artifacts yet, right?
For 1.9?
Yes.
No, yeah. So I'm linking here the there we have CNI, and we have a thread on Kubernetes dev, which I recently posted to. On this matter, where does it live? There we go. So those are the two main sources of truth in this matter, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be fine, but it is suboptimal. It's getting better with the 1.9 release, but as we actually can use official builds, not things we've built ourselves. But yeah, still, I mean, I badly want Bazel to just support multi-arch build, so we can just do Bazel build Kubernetes at, like, Bazel build and target it at the Kubernetes root folder and get artifacts instead of relying on Anago stuff from different CI buckets and compiling and dragging things into place. But yeah, kubelet dynamic config, a short update there. So what are we doing in kubeadm right now? This has merged since last week. On kubeadm init, before the wait for the API, for the static pods to come up, we write down the configuration for the kubelet to a file. Var lib kubelet config init kubelet. That part might just change in the future. Then the static pods are started. And yeah, the kubelet is started with arguments, with 4 arguments. This is kind of exciting. It's in alpha in 1.9, but still. Bootstrap kubeconfig as before, but the new ones are init config file or dir, depending on which, if a PR merges or not, and dynamic config dir. Okay, so that's the kubelet. So right now we bundle like 20 arguments to the kubelet or something like that, which are in the kubeadm deb, which messes things up. If you upgrade kubeadm before the kubelet, then you'll basically get a broken cluster. In order to mitigate that for future releases, there will be just these 4 arguments, and they won't change like between minor releases. So that's good. Then on kubeadm init, we first write the init config down, because otherwise the kubelet wouldn't even start. Then the control plane comes up. Then we post the same init configuration to our config map in the kube system namespace. Then we update the node, the master node spec config map source or something like, or node config source or something like that. We basically reference the config map from the node spec object. And then the master kubelet will notice that, well, I should grab this configuration from this config map and basically download that to the dynamic configuration dir directory. And it will checkpoint things locally there. So, and then that's it for kubeadm init. And yeah, well,
Are we going to enable this for 1.9?
No.
1.10?
1.10, yeah. And update ABAC rules.
That'll be super duper.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this.
No more fail on swap bugs.
Yeah, exactly. kubeadm join will basically do, with the bootstrap token, get the config map. Write the contents down to the init directory. That will make the kubelet will start. And
do you have a parent issue for this?
yes. Yeah, I'll link that. And do the TLS bootstrap.
I did not know you could put umlauts on a Y, by the way.
Sorry?
I said I did not know you could put umlauts on a Y.
Let's see. And so the kubelet, oh, I don't know how I managed to do that. The kubelet will start and do the TLS bootstrap. And then kubeadm join will use the TLS bootstrapped credential, a kubeconfig file, to patch the node object to use the dynamic config map. And that's basically it. Then we can just, if we upgrade our kubelet, we'll just switch the config map reference, and that's all. Or update the config map. So, I mean, this will be a much nicer way to do things declaratively instead of via the command line imperatively. So thanks to Peter for coding this thing up for me. Then we have manual AJ documentation. Let me see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, that's me then. Yes. Yes, because I basically needed HA. I want to set up a productive system. I want to use kubeadm. I decided to do some manual work on this. I'm currently still in the process of getting things running because basically yesterday and the day before yesterday I was trying to use etcd in Docker in Kubernetes just as the default setup of kubeadm init does it. Jamie told me today that it's not going to be the default for productive systems once the HA features are finished in kubeadm. So I'm now switching to using etcd running natively on the OS, which requires me to do some stuff from the beginning again. But I think I shall be finished with that end of tomorrow-ish and write down the steps basically, so that there will be some documentation how to do things. I know there is already something, but as far as I know, there isn't anything which is based on the current Kubernetes version of 1.8.3, 4, whatever it is. So I think that should be of some value, hopefully, for others. And then next step would be basically to do some testing on it and document it again.
If you want to coordinate that with, there's some other folks on SIG Cluster Lifecycle that we can poke, namely Craig Tracy's been working on the exact same thing. We should get him involved and you guys sync up so that way you can kind of, compare notes, because he has some Ansible scriptery that's doing very similar things, and we should, and there's a couple other open source things too that we could kind of distill down. I know that a couple other people have different kubeadm projects that do HA swizzling for you. Even KubeSpray does a portion of this too.
Yes, I've seen it. But I really wanted to stick to kubeadm simplicity, and since it's obviously going to be the standard in the future, so I rather don't want to set up many things manually, just as in KubeSpray I saw it. Yes, I created an issue on GitHub. Let me just find it. It's issue number 546.
Yes.
I can just put that in the chat. And some people have already commented on it. So maybe that's a good place to collect that information. If there's something else, then we'll just link to it. And if there's more stuff, more documentation already somewhere else, where we can move the whole thread to there, obviously, so that it doesn't have to stay here.
Yeah, thanks for volunteering to do work on this. So, like, as we didn't ship the alpha AJ thing with that CD operator and stuff this cycle, we basically decided, yeah, cool, you mentioned Craig here, going to do the same. So then we kind of thought on Slack and things that we should at least, like, we could have done this for many releases ago, but now is at least the time to document this in the official place on the Kubernetes IO docs and get more people aware of that it's possible to do kubeadm AJ if you basically can copy your files, your certs around and set up the load balancer. So yeah, that's great. I didn't know actually that Craig was working on it. That's really cool. So now we have at least 3, maybe 4 people basically doing striving to the same goal. Are there any blockers you see right now, or?
Not really, no. I think the blocker I had today was basically fixed by Jamie's comments, saying that I should rather stick to etcd running on the OS than trying to clusterize a single instance etcd running in Docker while the cluster was still up. So that caused some problems, although I got pretty far with that.
I don't think it should be that hard. But you don't have to do... well,
actually, I got it clusterized, but I had problems joining in the new masters. But that was actually when I stopped, because Jamie said, "Well, let's do the other way."
Yeah, so I would run etcd in containers, yes, instead of the host, but I would not use the. I would, from kubeadm's perspective, I would use external etcd, right? So I would run it in containers, but use external etcd and not try to convert the single node localhost thing kubeadm sets up for you in the static pod to an AJ thing. But should that work for you, or running it in Docker?
Well, I mean, I can always start it in Docker before I set up the cluster.
Yes.
So that is of course not a problem. That's really a matter of taste. I just thought it was rather elegant to have it in the manifest, so that Kubernetes actually tracks it, maintains it, but anyway. Converting the single instance I have from kubeadm to a cluster while the thing is still up, that was a bit tricky. And then in the end, I got into problems getting the new masters joining the cluster.
Yeah. So what I think should work is You specify external etcd from kubeadm's point of view. You write a static pod to the, like, you generate certificates for etcd. That's the first step. You write a static pod for etcd with the right parameters and things. Then you run external etcd for kubeadm. Like when you do kubeadm init, you point to localhost, like or your advertised address locally or something, or whatever other masters you have. And then kubeadm will start up the kubelet, and the kubelet will start the local etcd. But it's your configuration, your certs, your things that have the, like, that is are actually configured, so you get the AJ etcd from the start, right?
Well, I mean, if you have an already running etcd, then it's really a matter of taste how you start that. So that shouldn't really be the center of the investigation. So I think I will just write down a very simple way that works, and then then anybody should be free to extend it in some way.
Sounds good to me. Practically, how do we think, what's the easiest way to collaborate on this? Do we think a Google Doc that we turn into Markdown, or like to get these three people like writing on the same thing as soon as possible, because Docs Freeze is coming up pretty soon?
Well, I mean, Google Docs makes some kind of sense, I guess. Anyway, I'm fine with anything.
Okay. Do you have something written up already that you could just paste into a doc, or?
Well, basically, these are just shell scripts. I normally try to document stuff in shell scripts, so because I can try the documentation out. That's some advantage. But anyway, eventually I have to write it up. But I'm a pretty fast writer, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I would just like to have it all running once. So I wasn't that far today yet. And I think now, as I have understood pretty much what I still have to do, I think I shall succeed tomorrow. And then I should be able to start writing something up.
Cool. Sounds good to me. Please, yeah, you should definitely sync up with Jamie and Craig on Slack. Maybe like having an impromptu meeting as well, or something, hangout. I don't know if you feel you need that. And then I'm looking forward to seeing the doc, and we'll help review it and guide it to merge in the Kubernetes IO docs. Yes.
Okay, so once I've created the docs, I can just share it in the ticket, and people who are interested can take a look into it and write some stuff.
Yeah,
write some code.
Just ping us on Slack in SIG Cluster Lifecycle, and
all like that. Yes.
Yeah. That's the fastest way, at least for reaching me. One thing we still have to do is the other documentation. I will talk to Fabrizio and a couple of other people to check whether we can, if there's someone that will update our general docs. We have 3-4 pages on Kubernetes IO, something. I'll sync with them separately. And now we're out of time. Cool. Was a good meeting. See you. Happy Code Freeze, and see you all next week. Bye.